Now, I would request everyone to please take your seats. I would request Mr. G.S. Juneja, MD, Capco Industries Private Limited, to conduct the next session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So after the inspiring first session, now I think post-lunch session, everybody is ready for taking the further knowledge and inspiring things. So I would request Mr. Piyush Agarwal, Director, Agarwal Group, to please escort Mr. Anubrata Biswas, Managing Director and CEO, Airtel Payments Bank, on stage. And now I request Ms. Sonal Sisodia, Director, DCBM, to please do the floral welcome of our guest. And also I request Mr. Satyen Tiwari, Plant Head CNH, please give the memento to our guest. Yeah, I request AV team, yeah, please play the AV of Mr. Anubrata Biswas, please.
Mr. Anubrata Biswas. Anubrata Biswas is the MD and CEO of Airtel Payments Bank and an industry stalwart with over 2 decades of experience in banking and financial services. In his current role, he has built a sustainable model for India's first payments bank. Airtel Payments Bank today is a significant player in India's financial ecosystem. Anubrata started his banking career with ICICI Bank in 2001. He led several national and overseas assignments, including building the ICICI Bank brand in the USA and the Middle East and establishing retail banking for ICICI Bank in London. Anubrata served on leading industry bodies. He is the chairman of the PCI Committee for Payments Bank. He is also a member of the FICCI National Committee on Banking and is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. We are happy to have you amongst us. Please welcome Mr. Anubrata Biswas.
Yeah, now I request Mr. Anubrata Biswas, please address the gathering.
Good afternoon. It's really a privilege to be here. And firstly, a very warm thank you to the Indo Management Association, I must admit that I'm slightly flabbergasted by the incredible scale, quite the large number of people I see, and I certainly will try to do justice to the effort which people are making. Finally, I'm also conscious that it's the graveyard shift. It's just the shift after lunch. I'll also try to ensure that sugar levels appropriately are sort of raised as we progress. The topic I have been given, while it doesn't seem to be up on the stage, is to talk about fintechs. That's a topic which is close to my heart. It's also close to the business model of the bank. So let me just take a few steps back and talk a little bit about what are fintechs actually, what are they doing in India, and then talk a little bit about how our unique country is indeed so unique in this space. Fintechs have broadly taken a 20% incremental adoption rate in India. Adoption rate in fintechs is 87% compared to developed world, which is at around 60 to 65%. And India is home now, actually it's third largest in the country in terms of fintech unicorns. There are 22 fintech unicorns in the country today. And so before we dive deep into what are fintechs, it's important to just describe what a fintech is. I would call them very simply companies using the best of technology to capture a sliver of customer experience, doing it better than traditional banks, and therefore getting better customer usage, retention, and experience. As a consequence, given the fact that India is a very well-banked country, though not so very well-banked in many, many sectors of the economy, fintechs have grown in scale. And my estimate is that it will be a $100 billion industry in the next 5 to 10 years. Today, the broad estimate, both public and private, is that fintechs are valued at give or take around $25 billion. This is not unique to India. This is part of a very sharp, secular global trend which is underway. And I want to take some of your energy and talk about 4 trends. Let me call them the 4 C's. You know, in the physical world, over the last broadly 250,000 years, 250,000 years, energy has been the broad differentiator in terms of productivity increase. You broadly talk about agriculture first, fire before that, coal and steam, really leading to population increases and increase in population density. In the digital world, over the broad last 30 years, there has been 4 sequential secular trends. The first is really the trend of capacity. We are today we've just exited the exadata era, which is 10 to the power 21. We started 30 years back with kilobyte, it was 10 to the power 1. It's broadly expanding every 3 years at the power of 3. We are going to enter the yotta beta era, which is 10 to the power 24 in the next 2 years. So the first secular trend is there is more storage and more capacity. The second is that computing power is broadly increasing again at the rate of doubling every 3 to 4 years. You have Moore's law, which talks about how semiconductors are more and more compressed onto a silicon chip. This combination of capacity and computing is allowing certain fundamental technology shifts. The third is connectivity. Broadly 30 years back, the number of people connected to the internet was 10 million. That number expanded by 750 million in another 10 years. 10 years back, it was broadly 3 billion. Today, 5.3 billion people in the world are connected to the internet. You take these 3 things together to repeat connectivity, computing, and capacity. You have the 4th mega trend, which is really a trend of convergence, which is that unrelated technologies are coming together to form unique, sustainable customer experiences. The most classic one being the experience at the tip of your hands, that of your mobile phone, delivering a banking experience. The The mobile phone is broadly around 27 square centimeter, and it's delivering a full banking experience today in your hand. This is true, as I mentioned earlier, for the entire world, but India is unique because of three additional factors. I call them the 3Ds. And let me say a little bit more detail about the Ds. The first digital shift which has happened in the country, broadly 7-8 years back, is the fact that biometric identity has been enabled for every single citizen in this country, which has driven down cost of onboarding and KYC broadly down by 1/100th of the developed world. We call this part of the jam trinity, but it has really resulted in an unprecedented digital shift in the country. The second big innovation, where every single bank account in the country has been connected real time, has resulted in the transcendental shift in digital payments, the second D, which has led to the rise of UPI. In my opinion, the growth of UPI we are seeing today, we have seen only 10% of what is possible, because digital payments as a proportion of total payments in the country today still is single digit. If you take cash in circulation, it's actually less than 1%. The third big shift, if you really look at, let me just repeat again, we've talked about digital payments, and the third big shift which is underway, which we are not able to realize, is what I would call digital data. India traditionally has been a very data poor country formally. You have very poor number of records with adequate amount of information for it to be scored and for it to be lent at velocity. New frameworks coming into place, the data privacy bill is going to come into play this year. New frameworks like the Open Credit Network and new frameworks which have been instituted by RBI, such as the account aggregator, together is going to drive the next shift of what I call digital data. This 4 Cs of the global world and the 3 Ds of India together is really going to have a very unique set of convergences, because India is rolling out for 5G today as we speak. Airtel has enabled 147 cities, Jio has enabled slightly more, but all of them together, you can have unparalleled, unthought of businesses which someone cannot imagine today. I'll give you one example. Take high quality medical surgeries being done at scale by one surgeon sitting in a city and at scale across 100 villages in one day. Technically, it's possible because 5G enables you not just for speed, which is high processing video and high processing audio, but also very, very low latency, which means that medical equipment moved in your hand today in a city can instantaneously be transferred into a villager being operated hundreds and hundreds of miles away. These and other sorts of businesses will be possible because we are experiencing this phenomenon of convergence, which is different technologies globally and in India coming together. And therefore, I would argue really the golden era of fintechs is just upon us. In fact, it has not even started. 2 predictions I want to make right up there. You are going to see not just the UPI moment for payments, but the UPI moment for credit in the next 2 years. Lending is going to become quick, instantaneous, ubiquitous, and at high velocity, powering payments, purchases, and any other need state. Given the frameworks I established, given the technologies we talked about, it's there upon us. The second big prediction I'd like to make is that too long in the country we have been partnered or held ransom by one bank. We are soon going to have the Netflix of banking experiences, where you can pick and choose from a digital store your best possible product from your best possible experience set and be able to really mix and match and do what you want. So 2 big predictions, the UPI for credit and the Netflix of banking is upon us. So what's the problem? Why is it that fintechs are not scaling faster? why is it that fintechs have not totally replaced banks? Because this is the really great big divide which is there in the country. Are you a bank or are you a fintech? Do I want to partner with a fintech or do I want to be served by a bank? So there are two buts, as I was mentioning. There are 4 C's, 3 D's and 2 B's. There are two big buts. The cost of acquisition in the country remains extremely high. To give you a sense, for every single customer acquired and for him to become active, primarily the entire investment needs to be $10. $10 per user needs to go in to have an active user onboarded, engaged, and made sustainable by a fintech. If you really look at the macro of the country, you broadly have 500 million people, less than $500 per capita, which means that you're unable to generate income at that level for you to spend $10 per user. And that's the biggest problem of fintechs or facing fintechs today in the country. The second big but is that of sustainability. When you see that you have a $10 active user acquisition cost, you certainly from a lifetime value point of view need to have $100 of sustainable revenue from that user. When you offer a sliver of customer experience and one needs it, let's take payments. It's almost virtually impossible to generate that amount of revenue to get sustainable lifetime value. And therefore, the fintech model is the classic conundrum. Great for use, very poor for value, both finally for the company offering it and for the user who's going to use it for the next 10 years of his life. And therefore, that gets me to the last closing thesis of my argument here today, which is the last 1A. Let me make a little statement because I would hypothesize that the learned audience here is not fully aware of payment banks. Payment banks are India's only regulated fintechs. It's a slightly provocative statement, and let me explain what this means. Payment banks are banks which are allowed to operate through a wide variety of channels, digital, say through a mobile app, or through business correspondence, and offer banking services at a far, far lower cost to serve than traditional banks, and can onboard customers as long as you have access to a large captive customer base of any parent customer company. Let me talk to you a little bit about Airtel Payments Bank. The bank set up 6 years back, and today it does primarily 3 things. The first is that it has a network of 350,000 banking points, 60% of them in tier 6 villages, banking over 20 million customers every month. It's the largest banking network in the world, larger than Vodafone, M-Pesa in Africa. But it does not just that. It is today India's fastest growing digital bank, offering banking services through a mobile app embedded into the Airtel app, onboarding customers at a fraction of the cost of traditional banks, and it is seeing CAGR of 50% over the last 6 years. Thirdly, it is deeply embedded into India's ecosystem of cash and digital. It is India's largest B2B microcash services provider, offering cash management services to a host of companies in India, digitizing $1 billion of cash every month. Aggregate, the bank processes, give or take, 20,000 crores of payments a month, generates $250 million of revenue every year, and is fully profitable, which is the final point. It is India's only sustainable omni-channel fintech operating with a banking license. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, my final closing statement would be the great debate of whether fintech is here to stay or whether banks are forever is finally over. Payment banks are India's only sustainable fintechs with a banking license. Thank you very much.
We are having one question. This question is for Mr. Biswas. Yeah, please, you can sit. How do we see the future of economy using the cryptocurrency, and how is it going to affect the economic driven through banking system? So are we ready for this change? You can. Yeah.
So if I understand the question correctly, you're broadly asking me to make a comment on cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so how it is going to affect the banking system in future, if suppose?
Right. Look, I think this matter needs to be looked at in three clear and distinct lenses. First is what I would call a virtual currency, which is not backed by the sovereign. The second is a virtual currency which is indeed backed by the sovereign. And the third is, forgetting the currency, the underlying technology, which is blockchain. So let me take these matters one by one. Firstly, I think a virtual currency which is not backed by the sovereign is very much one of the world's greatest experiments underway. There is no evidence as of now that it is being used for any other purpose except speculation or to launder money. On a very different lens is the virtual currency backed by the government, where an experiment is underway, which personally I am very bullish on. Not because, and this was explained very beautifully by the RBI governor literally a month back, where he said that, look, the difference between cash and this currency is that, any digital wallet transaction is actually an interchange between the company holding the wallet and the customer. Whereas in a central bank digital currency, it is an interchange only between two people without a company coming in between. I thought that was a very simple way of explaining virtual currency. And what makes me optimistic about this is not the chance that it may really succeed, but the possible opportunity if it does. To me, in one shot, it will wipe out any single instance of possible tax evasion, illicit money laundering, because it will leave digital trails every single time. For a country where the informal economy is broadly 2 to 3 times the size of the formal economy, wild guess estimate out there, this is very, very dramatic in terms of its impact. And thirdly, I think while virtual currency is not backed by sovereign is speculative, we should not take anything away from the fact that blockchain as a product, as a technology solution, is extremely powerful because of the trust which is embedded between the actor and the consumer. Trade transaction, international remittance transactions, anything which is a two-party mechanism transaction is fundamentally very amenable to blockchain. The only hindrance or possible problem with this technology I see today is that the best possible blockchain solution today is able to support transactions of 60 transactions per second. The wildly speculative ones have done 120 to 128 transactions per second. This is not large enough for a country of the size and scale of India.
Okay, thank you. So, though we are having more questions, but because of the time limitation, so I'll request Mr. Piyush Agrawal kindly summarize the session.
So wonderful session after the lunch. Two things we have heard today. Money, which kept the interest up, and cybersecurity, which was a threat to us. So wonderful session placed immediately after the lunch so that we don't feel the dullness. As they say, change is the only constant. And since technology nowadays is feeding onto itself, so the rate of the change has also started changing. And this is where Anubrata Biswas ji's convergence principle comes in. Being a telecom service provider, entering into a banking segment and handling people's money. Like today we had Sanjay Agrawal ji also from AU Bank, so he said that the hardest thing to get in India is a banking license, and a banking license with a telecom operator. So this is what we are seeing convergence in action right in our lives. Another framework which is known as the 6D framework from Peter Diamandis. I'll talk about three things: digitalization, dematerialization, and democratization. So as earlier we used to have separate different objects on our table, now everything is being dematerialized. And it is all coming into a digital format. And now it is with the people, it is democratized. So this is where I bring in the point. Since our money has also been digitalized, dematerialized, now we don't carry any notes in our pockets. We don't even carry any credit cards anymore. All the payment gateways we are using. And UPI is one of the biggest product which has come out of India in recent times. And now we are talking about taking it global. So since all these things are happening right in front of us, so that brings me to the second point about what Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Pant mentioned today about cybercrime. Ransomware and crime as a service is now available on the tap of a phone in the darknet. So to end the session, I would like to summarize it like this. Take maximum benefit of the opportunities that lie ahead of us in the form of digital. So we cannot shy away from that. But at the same time, what Dr. Rajesh Pant mentioned was, also have a Suraksha Kavach, the Cyber Suraksha Kavach, which actually safeguards our investments, our hard-earned money, whether it is in digital format or in our banking transactions. So it is also all digital. So let's take best use of both the things. Thank you.
Thank you, Piyush. On behalf of IMA, I thank Dr. Rajesh Pant and Mr. Anubrata Biswas for sharing the valuable insight and knowledge. And we are truly grateful for your presence. Thank you, sir. And before going to the next session, I would like to also share some of the new initiatives which IMA has taken in this conclave. So in this conclave, we have a startup digital wall, and where we have presented the new ideas of startups. Second one is we have a showcase of 25 D2C, that is digital to consumer products of women entrepreneur, which is displayed at D2C counter. And third one is we have around 15 social organizations showing their good work done on our digital wall. So these are the IMA is, these have been done because IMA is promoting the entrepreneurship and social activities as a token of appreciation. So please do visit after the last session. And now I request Mr. Shailesh Dhanani, MD Omega Rubber Industries, please proceed for the next session.